What's up, comic book fans? It's the Emerald Enthusiast of the Multiverse Musings Podcast Network. Here with a look at the Hasbro 12-inch Titan Hero Series figure of Ikaris. Much like the Cersei figure that I recently reviewed, I got this figure on clearance. There are both positives and negatives, but I thought it would make a good review, so let's go ahead and get a look at the boxed details now. Here is the bottom front of the box. We get the Titan Hero Series lettering. There's the Hasbro logo. There is the Eternals logo, and we get a nice headshot here of Ikaris. On both sides of the packaging, we get promo shots of Ikaris. The bottom of the packaging is a solid field of black, and on the top it says Eternals. On the back of the packaging, we get a brief bio of Ikaris in 5 different languages. The English version says, "Ikaris is a mighty warrior and one of the most powerful Eternals in the universe." If you've seen my reviews before, you know that I talk about not being a fan of packaging that obscures a significant portion of the figure, and that's certainly the case here. We can't see the bottom half of the figure at all. However, at least this Titan Hero Series figure does have a protective window, so I do appreciate that. And now I think it's time to bust this figure out of the package and see what's inside. Here is the figure free of the outer packaging, but still bound to the inner cardboard. And here we see Ikaris out of the package and ready to rumble. I think there's a lot to like about this figure, especially from the point of view of this being a toy. I think if you buy this for a child to play with, they should be very happy. As a collector piece, well, there's obvious positives and obvious negatives. So let's go ahead and take a closer look at the details of this loose figure now. So let's look at the lower body now, and the figure is sturdy. I always appreciate that. There's lots of good sculpting here. You can see all these lines that give you the impression of like segmented pieces of the armor. So I do like this choice of blue by Hasbro. I do think it is attractive. And as you can see, it has like a glossy finish. It reflects the light well. However, I looked closely at Ikaris' costume from the movie, and it has kind of a mystical energy motif, so it's not one solid shade of blue. So while this isn't bad, it's certainly not completely accurate. As we take a look at articulation, once again, there's no ankle joint, there's no knee joint. I would give anything for Hasbro to start adding knee articulation to the Titan Hero Series line. There is some pretty good articulation with the hip area. You can get him to kick outward this far. So that's pretty impressive, I must say. You can also get him to kick forward, but you've got to be careful with this piece because the further you lift the leg, the more you can feel this pressing back against that. You certainly don't want to damage your figure. So be careful when you are articulating the hip area on this figure. And one other obvious negative, these lines should have gold trim. So there is some paint missing in terms of movie accuracy. But again, Hasbro designs this line for children, so it does cut some corners to keep the price point at around $10. So let's talk about that hip piece for a minute. I don't exactly know what this is called. I think it's a battle skirt, but if I'm wrong on that, forgive me. Nonetheless, I like what they did here. This is pliable, and that actually helped out with the articulation. But this looks really good. You see all these like segmented sections. And yeah, that just looks really attractive. Now, if you saw my review of Mighty Thor, I actually complained a little bit about the way Hasbro did a similar type of garment here. You can see that they basically just use like blocks of plastic to, try to suggest, a similar type of, battle skirt. And to me, this just doesn't look good. Now, the articulation is good, so maybe that's what they were going for. But when you look at these two pieces, to me, this is the obvious superior piece here. I really like how this looks, this pliable piece of plastic, as opposed to these large blocks of hard plastic. So let's peruse the torso here. And once again, there's no articulation. That's standard for Titan Hero series figures. But there's lots of masterful line work up here. Look at all that. That's pretty close to accurate for the costume. Also, this choice of gold paint, the gold doesn't look cheap at all. That looks really good. The paint applications are nice and tight. There are some gold sections missing, but again, Hasbro's trying to keep the price point down. Likewise, on the back, there's some gold missing. And of course, this is the port for the power effects function, which if you've watched my other reviews, you know that I've talked about these before. I really don't like those. They're eyesores, but nonetheless, this is an admirable effort from Hasbro on this torso. Let's have a look at the arms now. And there's lots of good texturing on this part of the costume. You can see that here. And again, that line work continues up here onto the shoulders. More application of the gold paint, which looks really good. You can see that line work here in the inner part of the biceps and the forearm. Now, in terms of articulation, it's a mixed bag. You can't get the arm to go up very far. That's as high as it goes up, which is a little disappointing. We do get 360 degrees of rotation, so that's pretty good. Now, on the right arm here, we get this gripping hand, which actually looks pretty good. So you can put something in his hand, although I would gladly trade articulation at the wrist for articulation at the elbow or the knee, of course. So let's have a look at the left arm now. Pretty much the same. I like the fact that the gold paint goes all the way around, at least on the shoulder. And again, the arm doesn't go up very far. Articulation on the fist here. The fist looks pretty good. So that is the positives and negatives of the arms. Now let's go ahead and have a look at the head sculpt. So here's a close-up of the head sculpt, and how you feel about this may be tied to how much you want a resemblance to Richard Madden. I think there's a passing resemblance, but I certainly don't think it's spot on. It's not a bad head sculpt in and of itself, but again, if you're looking for movie accuracy, you may be disappointed here. I looked at some still photos, and I remembered him having a little bit of a 5 o'clock shadow in the movie, and I was right about that. That is not present here. The paint applications on the eyes and the eyebrows don't look bad. I'll say that. The skin looks pretty good. You can get the head to look side to side, so I appreciate that. There's a little bit of articulation up and down, but very minimal. Now, the hair, this is another issue. First of all, I think it looks really plastic, and it's also lighter than Richard Madden's hair in Eternals. So now, if you're a fan of Ikaris from the comics, a lot of the depictions of Ikaris that I have seen in the past, the comics that he's been in that I've read, his hair's blonde. So this may not bother you. You could always make it darker or lighter with a little bit of paint. But again, this head sculpt, it depends on what your expectations are as to how much you like this. So just as a toy head sculpt, I don't think that it's bad. But again, if you're looking for movie accuracy, you may be a little disappointed. I certainly hope you have enjoyed this review. If so, please like, subscribe, and tell a friend to do the same. Stay tuned at the end of the video for some articulation shots, and also remember to catch me on the Multiverse Musings vidcast, available right here on YouTube, where we cover all the happenings in the DC and Marvel universes and beyond. Also remember to catch up with me on TikTok. And I'll be back to the internet with more comic book related content soon. But until we meet again, this has been the Emerald Enthusiast, and thanks for watching.